Hey, Chi.
Hey,
How are you?
good. Oh,
I'm good. Let me adjust here a little bit. Okay. So, everybody, welcome back to our Virtual Career Day series. My name is Alana Hosey. I'm a project interior designer here at HKS, one of the world's premier architecture firms. If this is your first time joining us, our Career Day series intends to introduce students and young professionals to all of the people that it takes to create the built environment around us. At HKS, we design everything from stadiums to skyscrapers, airports, hospitals, and we have over 1,000 people from all industries making it happen. Architects, engineers, accountants, anthropologists. There's literally a place here for everyone. Now, if this is your first time watching, we're in season 2 of our Career Day series, and I suggest you go back and check out our previous videos. I really enjoyed Josh's interview last year with interior designer Adelia Schlois. She's super interesting, one of my favorite people here. All of the videos are available on our Instagram and YouTube page, along with a lot of other really interesting videos about design. But today, I'm going to be chatting with one of our senior architectural designers out of our London office, Chi Bhatia. Chi, how are you doing?
good.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So, Chi, we start every video with the same question. When you were in high school, what did you think your career would be? And at what point did you know that you wanted to design sports and entertainment venues?
Me,
It seems like there's some background noise. I'm having some trouble hearing. Let's see. Let me see how I can adjust. Yeah, Chi, I can't seem to hear you at all almost.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. Okay. Let me know if it cuts out again.
Okay.
So yeah, high school, the limbo was between engineering and economics for me, and I kept going back and forth between both kind of ideas, and ultimately architecture seemed like a nice mix of kind of the, I guess, right brain and left brain, and kind of the art and science, and spoke to a few friends who had done it before, which helped. And then ultimately the university I picked also kind of needed other degrees in other schools, because I did want a double degree, which I ended up doing later. So I think for me it was kind of a happy medium between I was very curious about civil engineering, but also business and economics was interesting. And I'd done a lot of photography when I was younger, and art when I was younger as well. So I think it was a mix of a bit of everything, to be very honest.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when did you firm up architecture? And I know you've bounced around a bit. I know you're quite the global citizen. So when did you know it was architecture? And how did your kind of background moving around, how did it influence that decision?
So I think that played a part. I'm originally from India, but spent high school in Singapore. And Singapore, if you've been or you know about it, it's one of the more modern cities on the planet, and it really has everything from skyscrapers to unique bridges to a lot of layers of culture across kind of Chinese, Indian, Malay, architectural history, all combined with Western buildings and design, which what makes Singapore so unique. So I think that played a part indirectly. But having been fortunate enough to live in different countries when I was younger, mainly in Asia, and travel, that kind of gives you a different lens of what's unique around the world as well. So I do think kind of my background of how unique the world is, let's say, made me kind of interested to look at kind of urban environments, let's say, and the built environment in the end as well.
Very cool. So you're really a global citizen, as you just told us. What would you say are similarities or differences when designing sports and entertainment projects in different countries? Because sports and, of course, cultural norms vary greatly, especially between the US and Asia or Europe. what are the kind of differences or nuances in design?
So I'm a big sports fan myself, mainly football, global football, not American football, so soccer, and tennis, etc. And I think, American sports as well, I really enjoyed learning, understanding them while I was in college in the US as well. But I think to answer that question, every sport is very different.
Mm-hmm.
And every sport is experienced differently and consumed differently. And I think if you look at how music, movies, food is also very different per culture and region, sport is just another genre that changes depending on where you are and also what kind of sport, right? Because, we used to watch football in Singapore at 3 a.m. because that's the time it was live. So the way you experience it at 3 a.m. is different, at 10 a.m. when you're tailgating, right? So
Yeah.
I think culturally, sport is really rooted to your environment, and therefore you have to design with that mindset because you really have to understand your end user, who's the fan, as well as your client, who's the team owner or a rights holder, to really think about, how to innovate for that specific sport in whatever culture we're designing for. So it's a pretty complex matrix of how does a sport affect the design process, but also where are you watching that sport in the world, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so you mentioned the design process, and I understand that the sports group approaches design of these venues a bit differently than how another group would design, say, a skyscraper or a hotel. What sets your design process apart? Tell us a bit about the design process that you use.
So I'll answer that question as if it's, say, a new stadium or arena or training facility we're working on as an example. I think ultimately stadiums like airports are one of the only really, really large building types that have all the complexity from macro to micro. So macro, you're talking about urban design, right? These environments are civic monuments and have such a large impact on the community, as well as the wider kind of economic catalysm that it can create. And then they have really complex, roof and facade and long span structures that, from an engineering standpoint, they're very unique, very complex, and require, another lens there. It's almost like you're designing bridges, simply put, as part of a stadium or airport. And then you go inside the building and, the programming, the user groups, you're looking at 8, 10, 15 different types of people entering this building throughout the day. And each of them are trying to enter in a different entrance, eat, drink, go to the bathroom, shop, experience something, or get on a plane or watch an event. And so there's a lot of complexity there. And then lastly, you're building, places where people have memories and experiences. So there's like that brand touch point as well. So I think, we are lucky because the way HKS is set up, it's a very interdisciplinary studio. And therefore, we pull from our research team, we pull from our line group, which is like our laboratory for intensive exploration. It's a parametric and research team. We pull from our urban design studio, we pull from the interior designers. So it's a very complex kind of confluence of all these different disciplines that, we have to understand and weave into the design process. I do think airports are similar, and I think skyscrapers as well. But I think the scale of the building is what makes it complex, and therefore you have to have kind of ideas across all these other disciplines that I kind of spoke about.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting to hear. I know that globally, an emerging market in the sports kind of arena, if you will, is esports and the investment in technology for sports and entertainment venues. It's a huge market, and I know that you're heavily involved with how these venues are taking shape. How about you tell us a little bit about what's happening with esports, if you will, and how you and HKS are involved?
Yeah, me and a few other colleagues, we're on the younger side of things, so we can relate to video gaming more so than others. I would say for our kind of brand ethos and vision, it's more about the role of technology in the experiential entertainment space. And esports is a growing industry that, we're still learning. We're still trying to uncover what's happening and understand, where it's going. And it's more about, growing with the community of that industry and then weaving that into how it affects our goals and vision and the projects we get asked to do. I think, interestingly, we've been approached by many different, venture partners, team owners, IP holders to design environments for esports and gaming. And often the way an NFL stadium or a football stadium is designed, that's just one event. So I think it's taking a lot of the learning from traditional sports entertainment, black boxes, multi-purpose venues, and thinking about new ways that technology can provide unique experiences, almost closer to, say, a theme park, or kind of experiential entertainment, right? That I think is even more popular post-pandemic.
Yeah. Okay. Really cool. All right, guys, as we get ready to kind of wrap up things, if there are any questions that we have from our viewers, please go ahead and put them in the chat. And the last question that we have, it's pretty much the same question every week. We've really had a chance, though, today to kind of dive into designing venues. And I know it entails a lot more than a layperson might initially think. So what advice, Chi, would you give to a student or young professional looking to design sports facilities, and what does it take to really be good at it?
Sure. I think I can only speak from my experience, and I covered it earlier. I'm a big sports fan. And I think, to me, trying to bring sports into whatever I did was the goal. And, I was fortunate that path wove itself with design, sports, and business, let's say, as kind of a three verticals I enjoy thinking about working in. So I think weaving in kind of what you like doing, but also not forcing it, because sometimes it's hard to do that at the right time. But I think finding a way to, because architecture is very broad, right? So as an architecture student, you go through theory and technical, and you think you want to design this kind of building type, but sometimes it's about trying to weave in, what else you like, what are your other passions, what else interests you, and how do you weave that into, I guess the design process, because architecture teaches you how to design ideas and apps and buildings, right, and experiences. So, I think you can do a lot with the degree, and I think it's about connecting it to what else you're interested in, because there's a lot of opportunity there. You then enjoy your work, right? It's not as mundane as kind of how you would think it would be, I guess.
Sure. Okay, we have a question from Halen Lifts. She says, speaking of esports, she'd love to hear more about the incredible facility for Team Vitality in Paris.
Sure. So that was about 2.5 or 3 years ago. It was one of the first esports teams that wanted to have a physical presence for their brand. And it was very much about working with them to extend their brand into real estate. And, it was more about them becoming a lifestyle brand and seeing how we could provide new revenue opportunities for them to engage with fans in a physical environment off the high street in Paris. So, it had a retail component. They sold a lot of merchandise with their partner, Adidas. It had a food and beverage component so they could monetize, and allow people to sit there, eat and drink, but also had a lot of experiential layers for them to run events. So it was like a consumer-facing space that was flexible. And then the top 2 floors and the basement was more about, their office. It was their headquarters, where just like a WeWork. But it also had like their production environments, right, where they could produce content that they would put on social media, right? Because that's a large way that they can engage with fans is the virtual kind of outreach. So it was kind of a real hybrid environment.
Very cool. It's like an all-inclusive. That's
Exactly.
a one-stop shop.
Yep. Exactly.
That sounds really cool. Next time I'm in Paris, I'll make sure I check it out. Chi, thank you so much for taking your time to chat with me today. It's been a really great time. Next time, we will be talking with another person from HKS about another interesting career in the field of architecture. So please make sure you come back and join us. Oh, wait, there's another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
What's the coolest project? Oh, yeah. What's the coolest project you've worked on?
So, for me, it'll have to be SoFi Stadium. It was my first project out of university, and I was lucky to kind of work on it day one from very early days, helping select the site down to designing it for 2 years, and it was really being thrown in at the deep end to design a 70,000 seat stadium with a 6,000 seat arena, all part of a wider mixed use entertainment district. as well as, create the home for two NFL teams in the LA market. And, I'd lived in LA for 5 years already studying there. So it was a really unique project at the time, and hopefully there's more of them, but just at the time of where venues were heading and kind of what's the next, global precedent for what to give Stan Kroenke, the owner, and vision. It was just a dream project, quite literally, as a sports fan and as a design architect to kind of be a part of. But that requires a team of 100 plus designers and thinkers across our firm. So I'm sure a lot of us at HKS might select that as their dream project or favorite project.
Yeah, really cool. And then we have a question from the Starscape, and I'll kind of frame it a little bit differently. He said, he or she said, what exactly do you look for in a fresh graduate? And I'll add to that, especially when looking to be hired into the sports group.
Sure. So I think if you're out of design school, I think software proficiency is a big part. I think we use a lot more complex, parametric tools, as well as all the tools as part of our design process. I think that's important to be a bit more nimble. I think, we're really trying to grow our design studio more so, and especially with the younger generation that obviously don't have as much, technical experience, because they shouldn't. they're out of school. I think a passion to design, you don't have to have a passion for sport necessarily, because these buildings are unique civic environments. But I think that overall a design language and a design skill that we think is supportive of the ethos of the studio, which is to design really unique environments for any brand or team, depending on that market and that region. So I think it's a mixture of software proficiency, high quality design experience, but also, a work ethic, because, these projects are intense. And I think, it is tough. It is tough, and it requires kind of the diligence that a lot of, I'd say, busy design studios around the planet have. And, we're also finding our best process and improving our recruitment, but it's an important aspect because, the younger designers give us energy, right? And we also want fresh perspective, and that generation is the future fan that we are designing for. So it's also, we get to be the users for the buildings we design, right? Everyone likes going to an event, even if it's for the movies or a concert or a sports game, right? So I think that's a unique part of our sports group.
Cool. All right. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But as always, the video will be available on our IGTV as well as our YouTube channel, along with a lot of really great videos about design. So please like and share with anyone who you think needs to know more about career possibilities in architecture and, of course, HKS. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Chi, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Take care.